9 experienced hikers fled their tent in the freezing dark, half naked, and died in positions that made no sense, and the Soviet government locked the files away for decades. The record shows that on January 23, 1959, a hiking expedition called the Ural Traverse began in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. 10 hikers departed, led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineer with significant mountaineering experience. They were bound for a peak called Odorton. None of them knew they would become one of history's most scrutinized unsolved deaths. By late January, the group should have reached a telegraph station to signal their safe arrival. They didn't. Rescue teams mobilized weeks later. What they found on the mountainside wasn't a shelter destroyed by avalanche or exposure. It was something far more unsettling. The tent had been slashed open from the inside. The hikers' boots and heavy coats lay nearby, unused. 9 bodies were eventually recovered from the surrounding terrain over the following months. The question isn't where they were found, it's why they ran. The official Soviet investigation, led by prosecutor Lev Ivanov, concluded in early 1959 that an unknown compelling force caused the hikers to abandon their shelter. That's the phrase used in the report. Not avalanche, not bears, an unknown force. Then the file was sealed. When the bodies were examined, the injuries defied simple explanation. 3 hikers showed no external wounds at all. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko were found in their underwear, having apparently removed layers before freezing to death. The medical examiner's findings were never fully disclosed. Lyudmila Dubinina's body showed the most severe trauma. Her ribs were crushed with such force that experts later compared the injury to being struck by a moving vehicle. Yet no vehicle was found, no weapon, no animal claw marks. The record only says massive blunt force trauma. 2 more hikers, Semyon Zolotaryov and Nikolai Thiboksbrignoles, had fractured skulls. Zolotaryov's was particularly severe, a depressed fracture consistent with a heavy blow. Yet their bodies bore no defensive wounds. They hadn't fought back. They hadn't seen what hit them coming. The remaining 3 hikers, including Dyatlov himself, died from exposure. They were found closer to the tent, as if they'd attempted to return. But the sequence doesn't align. Why would experienced mountaineers run into a deadly cold night? What would make them abandon shelter, leave clothing behind, and never look back? The theories emerged fast. Avalanche was ruled out, the snow patterns didn't support it, and the tent location was relatively safe. Animal attack seemed impossible given the injuries and the lack of corresponding evidence. Hypothermia alone couldn't explain the trauma, the fractured skulls, the crushed ribs. Some investigators, speculating now, and the record flags this clearly, wondered if a second group of hikers or locals attacked the camp. But no evidence of a second group was ever found. No footprints, no witnesses. The Soviet authorities investigated and then stopped. Then they locked the files. In 1990, the case was reopened. Declassified documents revealed that prosecutor Ivanov had suspected military involvement, possibly a weapons test or secret operation in the region. The Ural Mountains were, after all, near Soviet military installations. But this remains speculation in the available record. Another theory emerged: infrasound. Some scientists proposed that low-frequency sound waves from wind passing through the mountains could cause panic, disorientation, and even hallucinations. The hikers might have fled in irrational terror. It's possible. It's also unprovable. The radiation hypothesis surfaced too. Some hikers' clothes showed traces of radioactivity, but the levels were not lethal, and the explanation was mundane: Soviet weapons testing in the region. Still, it fueled theories of contamination or exposure to unknown hazards. What we know with certainty is this: 9 experienced hikers died under circumstances that remain officially unexplained. The Soviet government investigated, then sealed the records. When those records were reopened, the critical evidence was incomplete. Photographs, notes, and testimonies were missing or redacted. The injuries were real. The abandonment of the tent was real. The deaths were real. But the cause, the mechanism that drove 9 rational people into a lethal night, that fractured skulls and crushed ribs with unknown force, remains locked away in history. In 2019, Russian authorities announced they would close the case again. They attributed the deaths to natural causes, avalanche, specifically, despite earlier investigations ruling it out. The announcement came with no new evidence presented to the public. The file closed once more. So we return to the core question: what drove them out? The record shows no definitive answer. It shows injuries inconsistent with known natural disasters. It shows a government that investigated, then stopped talking. It shows a mystery that survived declassification. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains unsolved because the mechanism of their deaths, the force that caused those injuries, the panic that drove them into the night, was never conclusively identified. We have facts. We have injuries. We have an official silence that speaks louder than any explanation. Subscribe. Each week we investigate a case where the official story doesn't match the evidence.